Radio Split Ranch.
Hello and welcome once again to Radio Split Ranch, a monthly visit with the Capital Region's great broadcasters of the past and sometimes present. I'm Warren Garling when I'm not on the radio, and I haven't been on the radio regularly for more than 4 years now, but that hasn't stopped me from keeping up with the folks I've worked with, worked for, and listened to since I got my first transistor radio when I was about 10 years old. Having spent more than 50 years in broadcasting, it's still how I actually identify myself and the reason for this monthly podcast. This month features an interview with the definition of dedication. If you've spent any time in the Capital Region of New York State over the last 55 years or so, there's a good chance you've been entertained and or enlightened by this professional, as the majority of his career has been spent on two of the most recognized call letters in the market. Please enjoy, as I did, my time spent talking with Jim Gagliardi. Well, I'm not sure where to start with this gentleman because we've worked together for many years, but well before that, he had a stellar career on the radio, and we even went to the same college, not at the same time, but we've got a lot in common about our career, so we're just going to probably start toward the beginning with Jim Gagliardi. How you doing, Jim?
Good, Chris.
How many years? Go ahead.
I've got 2 degrees.
Yeah.
And the reason I have 2 degrees is they spelled Massachusetts wrong in one of them.
Okay. I was thinking maybe you went on to a 4-year school after the 2-year school. Okay. Well, we'll get to...
I would have went to Emerson, but my GPA was 2.1 or 2.2, and also it was $3,600 a year.
Oh, gosh.
Which was a lot back in 1970, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we're
now,
talking the late
36 or 40,000 or something like that.
Crazy stuff. So we'll get into all that, okay, all those details, so everybody knows, where we're talking about. But my usual first question is where it all started. What led you to even think about, getting into radio when you were younger? So how old do you think you were when the feeling hit you?
Good question. And I'm probably 11, 12, 13 years old. My dad was a barber. One of his jobs.
Okay.
Had a barber shop on Crane Street in Schenectady.
Sure.
And also worked for a couple other barbers. But he had the shop on Crane Street is the one I remember the most. Craig and Ostrander, that
okay,
intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to bring home at the time. It was more popular than the New York Post, the New York Daily News.
Okay.
I think the Post is more popular than
I think so. Yeah.
Anyway. And that, I would, read the sports stories in there, and that got me interested in sports and, doing stuff in broadcasting. And,
okay.
So that got me started.
Okay. Now, were you just enjoyed reading it out loud, or you just what led
I
you
didn't read
toward
too
the
much out
radio
loud,
end?
but I just
Okay.
read I'd read the game summaries and the scores and all that stuff, and that seemed to plant a seed in my head.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So your thoughts were to do something sports-wise with broadcasting.
Right.
Okay. So what actually happened? What led you to pursue?
Well, I did, at the time, there was a Draper High School.
Sure.
In Rotterdam. It's no
now
longer.
That's
part of
apartments.
Mohanison, right?
Well, I think the old Draper, the original Draper is actually apartments now.
Right.
Yep.
I went to Draper, and we got our high school diploma out of there, and I did some public address announcing for some of the basketball games.
Ah, there you go.
Which was nice.
Yeah.
And I also at the time there was a Schenectady Union Star newspaper.
I remember it.
Yep, and
that was the afternoon paper.
Yep, the afternoon paper in Schenectady, and I did some, special correspondent work for them.
Okay.
Writing up the games for Draper that made it to the paper.
Interesting. Now, how did that come about? Is somebody you knew, or did you pursue it, or?
That's a good question. I knew Marty Ravalski fairly well, and he unfortunately has passed away. Al DeSantis at the time was the sports director. He's now passed away. Bill Arsenault, though, is still alive, and Bill is still doing some writing.
There you go.
Yeah. So anyway.
So you think one of those connections probably got you in there. I got you. Okay.
So that was high school, and then I played junior varsity basketball. I wasn't good enough to play varsity basketball, and the team got good, later on. And I did run some track with Ken Johnson. We used to call the Whip.
Okay.
Who was a good guy as well. So that was the sports angle behind everything.
Sure.
However, in the summer of 1968, I actually did a weekend top 40 show for the old WSNY.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you were there just before me.
And I at the time, it was easy listening, kind of, MOR station. But then Don DeRosa came on board.
Yep.
And turned it, into a top 40 rock format. And then they went to the, quote, Young Americans.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. But I just went by Jim Grant on the air. Okay?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But I did a weekend shift, and Don passed away a couple of years ago, too.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And Don was good.
Absolutely. He was my first boss, and I learned so much from him, and including some 4-letter words I'd never heard before when I was 16. But in any event, no, he was a character. He really was. But he knew his stuff. He knew, and he ran a tight ship, and I learned, a lot of us learned at his knee. Yeah.
Now, isn't Horace Perryman still around?
Horace is, yes, Doc.
Perryman, right?
Yeah.
And Doc was.
In fact, I just saw him last week at our Louis lunch, we call it. Yep.
Okay, there you go. Okay,
yep.
so
still
did a little work with Doc, and
did you?
And some of the other people there as well that were all top 40 jocks.
Sure. So you were there for that transition. It went from the easy listening to the yeah. I remember in 1968. When Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, that they went to a whole weekend of just very, with no talk, just, very, low key instrumentals. And it was pretty much in memoriam for like a whole weekend, if I'm not mistaken. And it was shortly thereafter that they made the format change, in either late 68 or early 69. I forget what that was. But yeah, so you were there, and then Don was your boss. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Skitch Henderson had something.
He was a part owner.
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
Yep. He was, I want to say maybe 49% owner or something like that.
And
yeah.
There was a guy named Gene Seehafer.
Gene Seehafer. He was the 51% owner, and he was the general manager.
Right.
Yes.
So, I started under Gene, more.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, we went from Draper High School to Graham. At the time, it was Cambridge School.
Yes.
And we were the first class to get a degree, and I'm seeing the Graham Junior College reunion come up there.
Yeah.
But we were the class of 69 was the first class to get degrees.
Yes, so there you go. And you were in that class.
I was in that class.
How cool is that?
Yep.
Yeah, and I only stayed for a year, so I have a half an associate's. I call it my half-ass degree. So, but we've talked about this on Joe Gallagher's show on GY over the years, you and I a couple of times, because he'd love to pit us against each other.
Right.
That you have the degree and I only have half the degree. But how did you find? Now, did somebody at the high school say Graham was the place to check into? Was it a guidance counselor sort of thing, or how did you find out about it?
There was a guidance counselor at Draper called Margaret Chenard, and she helped me in that respect.
Because that's how I found out about it too, my guidance counselor.
And I also looked at Leland Powers, and that's a broadcast school in Boston, correct? Yes.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I remember there was another. Now I forget the name of it. There was a chain of them around the country, broadcast school, but it wasn't an associate's degree. You just went for a few weeks to learn how to be a DJ. Yeah. Career Academy, it was called.
Okay.
Career Academy, yeah. But the one you mentioned, I don't remember.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, and Leland Powers was a broadcast school in Boston, and I think who went there. Here's a name from yesteryear. It was Dave DeMopier.
Oh, really? Okay.
And
all right.
Dave passed away a few years ago.
Yeah. So you went off to Boston in 1968.
67.
67, okay.
September 67. Talk about, what a run of sports. You had the Red Sox impossible dream. Right? You had the Celtics win their last two titles under player-coach Bill Russell.
There you go.
And the Bruins got good because they traded for Phil Esposito, and Bobby Orr became a superstar.
Absolutely, yeah. His name's in my crossword at least once a week.
And one of the teachers at Cambridge/Graham, got me a gig doing GBI games, Greater Boston Games, high school. And the teacher's name was Fred Cusick, who later became was the play-by-play voice for the Boston Bruins.
Okay, there you go.
So
how about that?
So anyway, and as I mentioned before we started this, my first sports interview was Jim Lonborg, who was the 20-win pitcher for the Red Sox in '67. Didn't he become a dentist, I think, by the way?
You got me. You're the sports guy here.
I just cracked a tooth a couple weeks ago. You know?
When I was at Graham, I was not a big sports fan at the time, although as I lived there for 2 years, I became a huge Boston fan of most of their teams. But
were you in the 645 Beacon Street door?
Yeah, we were. Sorry. Yes, I was actually in Levitt Hall.
Yeah, Levitt Hall, right.
Yep,
which was the old Hotel St. George, which became Levitt Hall, and then it became, after the school folded, the Hotel Buckminster.
Exactly.
And now I think that's gone too, right?
I think so, and I believe it's become either not townhouses, but some sort of apartment complex. Yeah. But I remember just being upset when the play-by-play for our school hockey team would go over I was supposed to go on the air at 6:30, and half the time the hockey game during season would go to 7:15, and I'd just be ticked off that I had less time on the radio, because of the sports. So I was more upset with the sports guys. Now, did you work at all for the college station, WCSB?
WCSB, yes, I did, and I was the sports director my second and last year.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Sports director the first year was a guy named Jim Phillips, who was a great guy.
Yeah.
I'd like to somehow get back in touch with him.
There you go. Well,
so I was the sports director the second year I was there.
Cool. If I had gone back for my second year, I was supposed to be the program director.
Oh, really?
WCSB. Yep. And that's my only regret is that I missed doing that. But I came home and found a job before any of my fellow students graduated, and then came home trying to look for a job, and I had the job, they had the degree, so I figured, I'm okay. Yeah. But so did you enjoy your time there?
Yes.
You made some friends?
Yep.
And
unfortunately, we were so shorthanded last year in our newsroom at GY that two of my college roommates that are still living, one passed away a few years ago, so I had, total of in the 2 years, I had 4 roommates, 2 1 year, 2 the other. Anyway, they had arranged to get together out there in Boston, and I just couldn't make it, which was, too bad.
Yeah.
But I do stay in touch with them, Dean Maharis and Jim Schermerhorn.
Excellent.
And it's isn't it funny? Around here, we pronounce it Skemmerhorn.
Skemmerhorn. Yeah.
They pronounce it. He's from Terryville, Connecticut, which was the home of Ted Baxter, a.k.a. Ted Knight.
Really? Ted Knight? I'll be darned.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who I met when I was at ROW.
I was going to say, I wondered if your paths even crossed.
Nice guy.
Yes.
He's unfortunately passed away as well.
Sure. So, a couple of years in Boston, and obviously, now did it change your the teams that you enjoyed following? I mean, had you been a Yankee fan and became a Red Sox fan?
Yeah,
or anything
now a lot
like
of people,
that?
will tell me I'm full of fecal matter when I say this, but I like both the Yankees and Red Sox.
Really? Wow.
And the Yankees because, number one, I grew up, following them on television, reading about them in the daily news. And then I became a Red Sox fan, obviously, when I went to Boston. And The Impossible Dream, Jim Lonborg, my first sports interview, going to Fenway Park, which is a great place to see a game.
Right, and we were right there.
Yep,
I mean,
exactly.
I remember sitting in an apartment during the summer, and when there was a home run, the crowd was so loud you'd hear them through the window before you'd hear them through the TV.
And then you see the ball fly, over the left field.
Exactly, in the Lansdowne Street. Exactly. Yeah.
And then I came back here, and the station I was working at carried the Yankees, so I got a chance to go for a lot of affiliates day. And one of those affiliates days was, besides being Phil Rizzuto Day, when he was alive, it was a day that Tom Seaver was pitching for the Chicago White Sox, and he won his 300th game.
Wow.
That was a tremendously riveting game to be in the park for.
Wow, you get some great memories already, and you're only in your teens here, That's terrific. So Boston, you mentioned you came home. And I came home a Red Sox fan as well, and a Celtics fan. Yeah.
I was a Celtics fan. I've never been a big New York Knicks fan, to be honest.
Okay.
I've been a Celtics fan all my life.
Yeah.
And I was a big Johnny Most fan. I've gotten Havlicek Stole the Ball and a couple of the albums, Heinsohn's Heroes, I think.
Yeah.
I've got several of those albums. And I still can't believe, by the way, speaking of, here we go again. John Havlicek, who was, his chest was so large they had to take 2 X-rays to get his whole chest.
Wow.
He died of Parkinson's disease?
Yeah. It's not fair. It's just not fair. No, I agree.
Yeah. So anyway,
Crazy.
we came back from Boston, and I forget who the heck it was. Somebody gave me a tip that there was a job at WRW, when WRW was easy listening.
Exactly. Yep.
And
AM only, 590. Yep.
And I got a job, and the program director at the time was Kurt Hahn.
Don't remember that name.
Okay. How about Ray Hellcamp?
That name I remember.
And Ray just passed away, I think, about 2 years ago. And Ray he became the PD after Kurt Hahn left, and Kurt had a lot of success in his career, and he's still alive.
Yeah.
So I began as the night announcer. Get in at 5 and get done at midnight or 1 o'clock.
Okay. Cool.
And
you were jockeying.
I was Yep. And it was a easy listening format. So bring on the Mantovani. I became a big, and I bet you I probably have more James Last albums.
Seriously? Oh, gosh.
And James Last did have one big hit in this country, The Seduction, from the movie American Gigolo, right?
Yes, I do remember that.
He had a lot of hits overseas.
Yeah.
And I liked the way, and he passed away about 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Jim, you got to stop talking about these dead people.
I wish I could have seen him in concert, because he did a lot of these sing along things where which I wasn't. I liked his period pieces or mood pieces a lot better.
Sure. No, he was a mainstay on middle of the road, easy listening type stations, back then. Yeah. So, and that didn't bother you, the fact that you're playing this stuff that mom and dad listened to? And,
no, not really.
Okay.
All right. I got cool. I got to know, besides Mantovani and James Last, there was Richard Clayderman. He was a piano player, right?
Don't remember that one.
And there were other people as well, that we got to know, and that was nice. And eventually at RO, I did wind up becoming the program director.
Yeah, I was going to say, now, the day where you were just talking about was late 69, early 70
That's when I started.
When you started it there. Okay,
and, And I was PD at RO from, 84, 85, 86 to 1993.
Wow. Now, were you doing, did you do the evening shift for the long time, or did you move around?
I did the evening shift for a while, then I flipped to afternoons.
Excellent.
I maybe filled in for some mornings as well.
Yeah.
We went through, we had a bunch of morning people there as well. Bill Shalcross, does that name ring a bell?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we'll talk about some of the guys that you worked with. You worked with one of the best news departments, that there ever was here in the Capital District. A lot of people, when they think news, they think where you still work, WGY. But I remember growing up, probably because my dad listened to the station, I remember the news people on WROW. So talk about some of these famous folks.
We talked a little bit earlier about Dave
DeMopier, for sure, yeah.
And Aaron Shepard became the news director.
There you go.
And I worked with, and I actually roomed for a year or two with Keith Barber.
Sure. Yeah.
Keith unfortunately passed away too.
Yeah.
So,
all these great names. No, these are names I remember.
There was
from
Art Andrew. I remember I worked with, and there were several others as well. They were all. The news department at RO was very good.
Yeah. And you're in the building with a TV station.
Channel 10.
Channel 10, yeah. So you mentioned meeting Ted Knight. That was probably through their ABC affiliation or whatever. And he had worked there for a while.
And I got to know Mary Caroline Powers very well.
There you go.
And there was Bruce Williamson.
Sure.
And here's two names. Dick Williams. Does that name ring a bell?
Yes, it does. Yeah, I do.
I think he went south. And at the time, he was one of the anchors and then went on to a talk show career, and he unfortunately passed away too. Ron Smith.
Now that name, now that you mention it, I guess I do remember a Ron Smith here locally. Yeah.
And a lot of times when I was doing the night shift and the people that were doing the 6 and 11 o'clock news, we will all adjourn to a place in Manans called the Vittles and Grog.
Okay.
And I can still remember Burning Love coming up on the jukebox, and there's Ron Smith doing a jig to it,
I'll be darned.
Easy 95.5 FM with your easy favorites and Barbra Streisand from the Broadway and London production of Cats, Memory. The Rascals grooving on We'll Make a Day Monday afternoon rather than a Sunday afternoon. Friends and Lovers, Gloria Loring, Carl Anderson, Neil Diamond, and I Said. And we have another Neil Diamond Christmas cassette to give away later on today. And later on this hour, when you hear the hockey players shoot and score. Shoot!
They score!
Just be caller 23 at 476-9769, 476-WROW. And we'll have a pair of coupons good for a pair of tickets to any single Adirondack Red Wings hockey game you want to see in the 92-93 regular season, subject to ticket availability. When you hear the hockey player shooting a score, which you just heard, when you hear it later on this hour, just be caller 23 and be a winner on Easy 95.5 FM, the only station for easy favorites. This is Chicago on Easy 95.5 FM. Easy 95.5 FM with your easy favorites in Chicago. Hard habit to break. Also Elton John. Sorry seems to be the hardest word. Andy Williams. And it is the most wonderful time of the year on Easy 95.5 FM.
Tell me about the transition to programming. Now, all of a sudden, the people you're working with are now working, you're their boss. Is what happened, So how did that transition go? Did you maintain friendships and all that good stuff?
Yeah, the transition went fairly well, and I adapted fairly well to the job of program director. Of course, the job with program director is you got a lot of, nits and things you've got to, look at.
Yeah.
Ironically, I was just over at GY this morning, and somebody made a mistake on the log, and a newscast that was supposed to air at the half hour aired at 20 after, which is that, and that's the kind of stuff when you're a program director, you have, you can catch.
Yes.
Or you should be looking for.
Should be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No offense, obviously, to the people running WGY at the moment.
Right.
But yeah, I made the same transition. In fact, interestingly enough, you said it was like 1980 something that you became
84, 85, 86.
Okay, well, probably early 80s, 81 in there somewhere. I became program director at GNA after having been, just one of the guys, for about 5 years. And so, I found the same thing. I seemed to maintain the friendship with everybody and could still be their boss, and we seemed to get along. I don't remember having too many problems along the way, but it is interesting when you make that step up. You know what I did start doing? I started wearing a tie every day.
Yeah.
I figured that would set me apart from the rest of the staff who were coming in T-shirts,
Yeah.
And so I think I may have told this story once before. Jim Lowe was doing middays for us for a while, and I was doing mornings, and every day he'd come in a different T-shirt, and I said to him one day, I said, if you ever came in wearing a tie, I think I would just pass right out. So he waited till I turned my mic on the next day, and he came by the window and he had a T-shirt on with a tie over top of it. And of course he got me, and I started laughing out loud and had to explain to everybody what was going on. So, but that's the kind of the fun that we had, back in the days when it was local, live, and you were making the big decisions. So you had fun as a PD.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hard work and more than 8-hour days a lot of times, but it was fun.
Absolutely. And who were some of the folks that you were on the air with at the time? You get some disc jockey names you can mention? Do any of them stick in your head? I know you know the news people, but do you remember some of the jockeys?
Well, I worked a long time with, and he's still alive, thankfully, Joe Condon.
Joe Condon. I knew you were going to mention Joe, who we've been trying to get on this
Joe taught me a
podcast.
lot, and he was a good, again, he taught me a lot, and he was a good worker.
Well, while you were working with him there, I was teaching with him over at the new school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were both there in the early 80s together. Yep.
Okay.
And a lot of times we would share a class. He would do 2 or 3 days of the class, and I would do a couple of days of the class. Yeah.
And we work with Walt Fritz. There's a name. Phil.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Walt goes back to my first job in radio at SNY. Yeah.
And Walt was at GY. Then he came with us for a while.
Okay. Now I didn't remember that. Okay. Yeah.
And there were some good people,
Sure. And the format pretty much stayed the same the whole time you were there?
We easy listening, evolving into very, not intense adult contemporary, but, playing more vocals rather than.
I was going to say.
Than the Manavani, James Last, Richard Clayderman.
Ray Kniff,
Ray
as my wife calls him,
Ray Kniff, Norman Candler, and,
Yeah. So you started mixing in some of the more contemporary, adult contemporary.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And so that lasted until when?
93, it was announced that there was an asset sale with Albany Broadcasting taking over at the time. Radio Terrace owned it. We were owned for a while, by the way, by John Gambling.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
And John I got a chance to interact with John several times.
Mm-hmm.
This is John A.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And we're okay, so this was John R.
John R is still around.
Okay, yeah.
John B, I think, was the father of John A, right? So, but John, it was called Jag Communications.
Okay.
And John was a great guy, and he was a legendary personality down in New York City.
New York City, exactly. For those uninitiated, but I knew the name. Yeah, yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah, nice, nice to work for good people.
Yep.
And, always has been.
So, in 93, it was Gary Pease had taken us in over a few years prior to that, and it was Radio Terrace.
Okay.
He owned a station in Peekskill, WHUD.
Okay.
Okay. And there's still a few people that, we worked with years ago that are, I think, still down there. Anyway, and I think Gary went to Florida a few years ago. Anyway, Albany Broadcasting purchased the stations, and it was an asset sale. And unfortunately, I was one of the assets, so it was, adios amigos. And,
wow.
And that's when Buzz Brindle,
Sure. Now, that's quite a run. I mean, you're talking, 1970, 69, 70.
It's a 93.
To 93.
And
wow.
I did, Buzz let me do a last show. It was on December 26, 1993, which I gave you the cassette for.
Yep.
95.5, that is Vangelis, of course, from the tail end of 1981 and early 1982. Chariots of Fire, I remember when I wanted to put the record in the playlist, the program director said, but no, don't do it. It sounds like a slapping screen door, which, of course, was the synthesizer effect. And I said, nah, let's go ahead and do it. And he said, all right, limited play on that. And in other words, play it, maybe once every 2 or 3 days. Well, we put it in once every 2 or 3 days. We got calls on it. Then, of course, the record became a big top 20 hit. Motion picture, Chariots of Fire. 11 minutes after 4 o'clock, 4:11 with Jim Gagliardi here on our final show at WROW. Next on our parade of hits that we called. And this one was a bit of a longer shot, again from a motion picture. It came out in 1985, the song and the motion picture as well. The motion picture was called The Never-Ending Story. The song was by a singer called Lamal, very popular overseas. And the song was the same title as the motion picture. 95.5 FM, that's European singing sensation Lamal, who's had quite a few hits overseas. Not too many in this country, but that was one of them that did hit here in the States, as they'd say up in Canada. A top 20 record from the motion picture The Never-Ending Story from 1985. 14 minutes after 4 o'clock, 4:14, Jim Gagliardi with a very special hour here on our last show at WROW. We'll have more of those hits and misses coming up. And we'll also have a chance for you to win another $25 gift certificate from Jack's. That's coming up here on Easy 95.5 FM.
And then I stayed till the first week of January just to make sure everything was all right.
Okay.
And John Kelly, is that name ringing?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like, geez, you've done a good job here, Jim. Maybe I, underestimated, which was, very fun. And I remember the last day at RO, we had a mini snowstorm.
Okay.
4 or 5 inches. So I came in to run the computer for the school closing, which at that time they were still being read on the air,
live.
Which of course that stopped, right?
Yes, it did.
And so I came in early, did a few other things, and then at 11 or 11:30, I said, "That's it."
Wow!
And I went to Paulie's Hotel, which is on Central and Quail in Albany, and I said, Orem.
Wow, that is something to be at the same station for that many years.
Yep.
There aren't too many in the market that have done that.
Mm-hmm.
I think of Don Weeks being perhaps, the epitome of, same station for many, many years.
Don was a great talent.
Absolutely. And you actually wind up going that direction. But what happened after ROW? So where'd you go in 93?
No, it was tail end of 93, and I worked till the first week of January 94. I went to GY in the third week of March of 1994.
Okay. And what were you doing for them?
News.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
Yeah. So now, was that because there was an availability?
There was an availability.
Okay.
I was hired with a guy named, does this name ring a bell? Bob Ellert.
A little bit.
Yeah. Bob was from the Midwest.
Okay.
And he's still around. And he's back in the Midwest or down south right now.
Okay. So actually, I had joined GFM, actually it was WGY-FM they had gone to when it was oldies. So that was early 90, or that was sometime in 92. And so when you came over in 93, I was there. Or 94.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there. And of course, in 94, we switched the station over to the river.
Right. And the man that did that was Hank Nevins. Right?
Exactly.
And Hank was my program director in Boston at
WCSB, the college radio
and
station.
Here's I tried to get a hold of him a couple of years ago. I got nowhere.
Yeah, I kept in touch for a short time after he left the area, and then we just lost track of each other.
He's still in the Buffalo
As
Lockport
far
area,
as I
right?
know, he's in Buffalo. Yeah, and he was on the air there for many years after he left us here. Yeah.
No, Hank was great. Dan Miller was there. Does that name ring a
Sure.
bell?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yep. Dan was there for quite a while.
Yeah, I should have. I had a picture of him and his wife. I should have brought that with. I brought the picture of you and me at the Grammar.
Yes, from many years ago.
And Chuck Custer was there.
Sure.
And Chuck became the news director and eventually became the program director.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I still stay in touch with Chuck.
Yes, I do too.
He's a good guy. He's on, I think, North Carolina now.
Correct. Yep. He still gets invited to our lunches, and he still reminds us that he's in North Carolina. But he says, keep sending me the invites because you never know when he could be up here visiting, and that he might be able to join us.
Now you have these lunches, you say?
Yes, these lunches that you have never been able to attend because you're always working, Jim.
Okay, now I'm doing an early morning shift these days. What time are the lunches?
Well, the lunches are usually right at noon, but if you think you could make a 1 o'clock lunch, I could always move the time to 1 o'clock. In fact, 2 people this last week showed up at 1 o'clock thinking it was at 1.
Okay.
So we could do that if you think you could sneak out. And we're right next, we do it at the Metro 7 Diner. I mean, we're right across
down
the street from where you're working.
Okay, all right. Yeah, keep me in mind for the next one then. Yeah, definitely.
So, here we are talking about, WGY or ROW and how long you were there.
Yep.
Have you been steady at GY since 93? 94, excuse me.
94 to 2006. The third week of 2006. Chuck comes in and says, we have to let a bunch of people go, and I was one of them.
Oh, boy.
So, now what that did do in 2006 was, and I didn't chewed up my savings between 2006 and 2011 when I went back to GY.
Right.
But I was able to take care of my dad, who passed away at 101 years of age.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And that happened in June of 2010.
Okay. All right.
So
you took that time to actually be with your dad all that time.
Exactly. I did a few small, voice things or something like that, but I didn't do a 40-hour week job or even a 20-hour week job.
Wow. Well, good for you, Jim. Savings, but you were able to spend some quality time with your dad in his later years. That's terrific.
We kept him out of a home and all that kind of
stuff.
Yeah,
exactly. Wow.
So I got hired back on January 11th, January of 2011.
Okay, gotcha.
I think January 10th or something like that, so anyway, and I've been there since January 2011. So that's 2 runs the first one was 12 years, and now this is, 13, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there you go.
So there's 12 and 13, so there's 25 there, and there's 24, 25 at ROW, so there's 50 years, right?
You're going to ruin our average here for people that have stopped at different call letters, because I'm going to have SNY, ROW, and WGY. Are there any others?
Yeah, I did some part-time work and it was Freddie Cusick that we talked about. I did some high school hockey.
Okay.
That was WNTN.
Okay.
Which is a 10,000-watt day timer in Newton, Massachusetts.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Okay.
1550 or something like that. I think it's still around, right?
Okay, yeah. So that was prior to all this other stuff. Yeah. That's terrific. Yeah. So, the average at the end of each podcast, we tell everybody how many stations, how many call letters you'd worked at. Okay. The GY was going to count just once, even though you were there twice. We just call letters. And the average for everybody that we've had on the podcast so far is about 10 stations.
Okay, so I'm below average.
You're going to bring the average down a little bit. John Gabriel was probably the one that worked at the most stations. I think his was 14 or 15.
Really? That many?
Yeah, that many, exactly.
He's on the air, isn't that right?
So, and he's still on the air, exactly. Yep.
Doing a good job,
And so are you. Now, let's talk about the changes over the years, okay? When you joined in 94 the first time, you were live.
Yep.
And GY always been known as a powerhouse in the news department. And so where has this led to? How does it work these days?
These days, like right now, our news director is actually based in New York City.
Okay.
And her name is Jennifer Pulsoni, and she's a good person.
Yeah.
She's very talented, too, by the way. Mm-hmm. And what iHeart, the old Clear Channel.
Yeah.
And I think Lowry Mays is dead now too, right? So Anyway, what iHeart has done in the past couple of years is consolidated all the news departments, and it's if we have a vacancy hole, like somebody wants to take a day off, and we don't have somebody on staff to fill, we can have somebody from
a different market.
Yeah, Goiter, Nebraska, Bobo, Mississippi. Those are actual towns. I'm making up.
Wait a minute. Goiter, Nebraska? Seriously?
Bobo, Mississippi. Rhinelander, Wisconsin. Yeah, those are actual cities. Anyway, but no, seriously, from another market they can wand the newscast in.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's one big change. A lot of the newscasts, and I don't necessarily agree with this, a lot of the newscasts that we have on GY these days are taped.
Okay.
And they're taped like within we have the person is there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even though some people can work from home now. Okay.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But the newscasts are taped, and they're taped within the half hour. But you never know sometimes. A perfect recent speech much, Jim? A perfect recent example is the earthquake we had 3, 4, 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
That happened at 10:30 in the morning about,
yes,
right?
I was sitting right where I am right now, and the room started moving back and forth. Yep.
And we had a taped newscast that day, and it flipped in at 11 o'clock, and it didn't mention,
Yeah.
So I went on, and what I should have done, quite frankly, so I'm hitting myself, I should have overrode that newscast. I went on after the newscast to say, okay, updating you now on the earthquake,
Gotcha.
But I should have cancel,
That's him hitting himself in the side of the head, folks.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Trying to knock some sense into himself.
So anyway, but that's the problem with tape newscast. Things, I can't, many times I can remember flying into the booth to do a live newscast with something that just happened 2 minutes ago.
Exactly.
And I don't have a script written out, but I've got stuff that I can ad-lib.
Sure.
And luckily, knock on wood, I still have the ability to ad-lib.
You absolutely do. And I have to pay you a compliment, sir. You are just as far as I'm concerned, you're just one of the most talented news professionals that's ever crossed the threshold at GY. You really are.
Well, thank you.
You're dedicated to your job.
I'll write the check in 20 minutes.
I only charge $10. It's really, it used to be $5, but inflation. But no, I believe this with all my heart. I know you more as a newsman because
that's why I brought
working with you in the early 90s, exactly. So I know you more as that person that was always there. We could always count on you. I don't think you ever missed an election night, whether it be a national or local or around the corner election night. You were there and you were covering things, and I just have admired you for your tenacity. And everybody in this area knows the name.
Well, that's good
because you're there, you're present.
They know how to pronounce it now, too,
They know how to pronounce it.
And, Not Gagliardi, Gagliardi.
But no, I've always admired your tenacity and your go-getiveness, that you're out there, covering the story.
And the diamonds and the rubies and how they sparkle on your hand. And don't you love them?
Oh, yeah.
After 40 years at its North Pearl Street location and 74 years downtown, Frank Adams Jewelers closed the doors on its downtown store last night for the final time. Owner David Adams.
Yeah, the key was in the door last night at 7 o'clock, and today we're going to be packing up everything, and it's going to be from there the finality, starting to sell off showcases and fixtures.
Adams tells WGY News that the opening of a second store at Stuyvesant Plaza last spring was the beginning of the end for the downtown store.
Because after we opened up in Stuyvesant Plaza, we found that over 90% of our business had already moved to that location, and less than 10 was happening down here.
Adams says that all full-time employees will be kept, and the Stuyvesant Plaza store will have longer business hours than the North Pearl Street store had. Jim Gagliardi, WGY News.
Shifting back briefly into music, and I've just noticed this over the past 2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
I hear a song on the radio now, and it's like, oh, I remember playing that, or I interviewed this person back in boom-de boom,
exactly,
or I saw the concert with this person I'm listening,
Sure.
Only over the past couple of months now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I have you to thank for, you were talking about taped newscasts, which, you never used to be. What I did my final 20 years in the business was voice tracked everything. I was hardly ever live on WTRY from 2002 to 2020. And the deal was one day I had been subbing for Jamie Roberts, but she did morning. She's still on the air at TRY, and I'd been subbing for her. But the deal was that I would record the show the night before. I'd voice track it, put it in the computer, and it would be on the next morning. So you're in the newsroom one afternoon, and I'm leaving at like 7 o'clock at night, having done the morning shift already. It's in the computer, and as I walk past you, you say, "Leslie Gore just died."
Oh, really? Oh, God.
And I said, "Thanks, Jim. Now I have to go back in the studio and make sure I mention it on tomorrow morning's show," because it would have been really stupid not to do that.
Yep.
And so that's the stuff that you do run into when you're talking.
She was very talented.
Tracking. Very, very talented and had a lot of great hits. And so I couldn't let the morning go by without playing one or two of them. And so I went back in, recorded a couple of different breaks over again and put some of her music in. But again, I have you to thank for that. Again, because you had the wherewithal to tell me that was happening when you knew it applied to me, so yeah. But let's talk about some of the other memories. We've kind of given short shrift to all these years that you've done, news. What stands out in your mind about some of the stories that you covered over the years? Any that you like to tell tales about, whether it was just because it was such a big story, or maybe something, funny that happened covering something serious, which happens occasionally. Anything bop into your mind from the 90s and then into the 2000s?
Two I can think of that these aren't funny at all. One, this that I'm going to mention now. The other one, E. coli outbreak at the Washington County Fair. That killed a couple people.
Yes.
And I did win a National Murrow for that, Edward R. Murrow Award.
Wow. Well, good for you, sir.
It was weekend coverage, and a day or two after, a day or two before, I forget. But I did a lot of that with, here's a name from the Channel 10 past, Sarah Welch. Does that name ring a bell?
That name doesn't ring a bell, no.
She's out in California now, doing very well.
Yeah.
Another story I remember, that these are just two that I'm bringing up right now, is the 1998 tornadoes here.
Oh, yeah. You're talking the ones up in the Mechanicville area. Yep.
Mechanicville, Stillwater. And I remember it was a Sunday, right?
Yep.
I was on the air, and the shift on Sunday was 12:15, 12:30 to 8:15, 8:30.
Okay.
And when we got on the, 12:15, 12:30 was, there could be some severe weather. And I think the severe weather hit mid to late afternoon. And then I remember I was in the studio, and all of a sudden, Chuck Custer and one or two other people come flying in, and we went, meaning GY went totally live.
Wall to wall, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that happened a lot back in those days. It doesn't happen as much now.
I agree. And as much as it maybe should have, or could, should be, I should say. Yeah. But back in the day, I just remember when something big was happening, I turned on WGY.
Right.
And this is well before I worked there.
Yep.
I'd be working for competition, and I'd say, no, I know where I'm going to get the news and get it fast. And
I think, with the exception of, again, not overriding that 11 o'clock news, I did do 3 special reports breaking into programming. And at the time, let's see, it was talking about the earthquake.
Sure.
Because we got 6 to 8 calls in the newsroom. What's going on?
Yeah, sure.
So, but I broke into and we have a syndicated show called the Glenn Beck Program.
Sure.
And I just broke into it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, that's what good news people do.
Yep.
That's what it was about. I remember I was news director for a short time at WGNA when we first signed on. And I remember making sure there was somebody, we didn't have local news, I don't believe, on Sundays. And Mayor Corning was in the hospital, and we knew Boston. He wasn't going to come out.
Right.
Yeah. And I remember making sure there was somebody assigned, that would be monitoring, the situation, and was going to come in and do, live reports and of course call folks up and get comments and stuff if he passed on a day where we weren't having full coverage. Yeah. So to me, that was just what you did, as a newsman.
And GY, we still do that. We break in, we do extra stuff. So we still do that, and that's good.
Yeah.
I would, again, the tape newscasts, and in the morning we do, for the most part, live newscasts. There are some times when we don't have the morning show there, I have to do tape, but 90 to 95% of the time, the newscasts in the morning are live,
Gotcha.
and that's good.
Gotcha. Now, are you doing some newscasts for other stations in the company as well, or
I did for a while, a year or 2 or 3 years ago. I did, and I got very friendly with a guy in Providence, Rhode Island, named Bill George.
Okay.
And they've got a WHJJ AM.
Okay.
They've got an FM that does very well. The AM is, So we did newscasts for him. I also did some newscasts for stations in New Haven and Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay, there you go.
So,
while you're sitting in the studios in Latham. Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, that's again how the business has gone.
That's how the business has evolved.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we're still doing newscasts here, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Are you still just as big a sports freak as you were as a kid? Are you?
Yeah, maybe a smidge less, but
okay.
Saratoga Racecourse really became what it is now. When in the 60s, it was a 24-day meeting, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the mid to late 70s, that's when it began to ramp up with, and one of the people that was instrumental in doing that, and I saved the paper when another person
passed away.
Ed Louie.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, he had a lot to do with the success there. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
But Saratoga now, this year you're going to have the Belmont, and next year too at Saratoga. That's
exactly.
huge.
How cool is that? Yeah. It is big.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And over the years, I got to talk to Tom Durkin, who
the voice of Saratoga,
who is a great and a funny guy.
Yes.
Too.
Yes.
Larry Kalmus is somebody I really wanted to talk to more. I didn't. John Embriel is a guy I got to know, and I think, didn't he just retire? I believe.
Maybe. I don't know.
So anyway, but that again, that began to ramp up to superstar status, or what everybody knows and loves now, in the mid to late 70s. Back in the 50s and 60s, it wasn't that.
Yeah, I agree.
Since, I can't say I was around that much in the 50s, but the 60s, it was there, and the summer meet was there, and that was it. But,
Are you an aficionado, or are you up there a little bit in the season?
Yeah, I haven't, now the past year or two, I haven't gone up as much as I normally do, but I was there for a lot of it, and a lot of the, historic moments, and the meet. And of course, the meet is expanded from 24 days now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
And the other stuff that I know that you enjoy is that you've never lost your love for music.
Right.
And you've had the opportunity to meet some great folks along the way and interview some folks. Talk about some of your favorites. And the people that know Jim Gagliardi knows where we're going here. But
we're coming up to unfortunately, the year anniversary of the death of Gordon Lightfoot.
Gordon Lightfoot. I know he was one of your favorites.
And I did a lot of promotions with him. We talked a lot on the phone. And I used to go to Toronto a lot years ago. And we ate in the same restaurant. Known as Bigliardi's, Bigliardi.
Oh, that's interesting.
George Bigliardi. That restaurant was right across the street from Maple Leaf Gardens, which is where the Toronto Maple Leafs used to play.
Sure.
But I'd run into Gord there a lot, and I met the second wife. She was very nice.
Mm-hmm.
I never met Kathy Smith, who's the woman he, went out with for a while. That's the woman that gave the speedball to John Belushi.
Yeah, I knew that name. Yep.
Didn't know the first wife at all. And 4 or 5 years ago, he just married a woman named Kim Hassey. Now she's unfortunately a widow, but he had a great career. And
absolutely.
And I think I saw him in concert 20 to 25 times at least, and would go to other cities sometimes to see.
Nice. Nice. That's a fan.
And the other, big, in the case of group, and also I'll bring up an individual, the Moody Blues.
Yeah, I know they're your favorites too.
And I've done now several interviews with Justin Hayward, the lead singer, who's the guy that also wrote, Nights of White Satin, Tuesday Afternoon, Question, A Story in Your Eyes, and more recently, Your Wildest Dreams, and I Know You're Out There Somewhere. And Gemini Dream in the
stuff.
Voice. Yeah.
Sure. No, one of my favorites, and I think you actually may have been instrumental in helping me understand that I should buy one of his solo albums a few years ago.
Okay.
I think you must have mentioned to me that he had one coming out, and I love it. It's one of my favorite albums. Yeah.
Which one is it, dude?
Now I've forgotten. I knew you'd do that to me, but it was and he had a hit, a top 40 hit off of it. It didn't get huge, but Moody Blues have been my favorite since my first year on the radio. They were hitting it big.
And I got a chance to see, and he just passed away, unfortunately, too. The first lead singer was at Crossgates there a couple of years ago, Denny Lane.
Denny Lane, yep.
And nice guy.
I've been a fan, and now that I think about it, Go Now is one of my favorite Moody Blues tunes, and that was the original lineup back in 65.
Lineup, 65.
Yeah.
And then they had a couple follow-ups. There was a follow-up song from The Bottom of My Heart that was tremendous. It
didn't do anything.
Yeah, it didn't do it. You got up to 85 or 90 on the chart. So anyway. And then Denny Lane and Clint Warwick left, and then John Lodge and Justin Hayward joined the group.
There you go. Rest, as they say, is rock and roll history.
Rock and roll history, right.
Good for you.
The guy I would have liked to have interviewed is the keyboard player for all the years, Mike Pinder. And then he left when they reformed for Octave. They brought Patrick Moraz on board, and the former Yes, Yep. And Moraz gave them some good keyboard work. Unfortunately, I guess he sued them when they, because they're saying, he was just an additional keyboard player, and he was saying, no, I was brought in to replace Mike Pinder.
There you go.
And I think he won. I think he wanted 300 or 400,000. I think he got 89 or 90,000 or something. Anyway, no. But that's on Court TV.
Yeah, there's the Yes box set up there.
Okay,
and then there's the Moody Blues Time Traveler. Yes. Yep. So I'm with you.
That did go gold. Do you have on the Moody Blues? Do you have the one with the additional disc?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the extra disc.
The extra disc, which has some of the things. Remember the show they did at Red Rocks?
Yes,
that was, and that still appears on MHT every now and then.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That was a great show.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm glad they did it, and it gave their career another couple of years.
Sure. Yeah. No, they've stood the test of time, and only recently decided, I guess, not to do new stuff, but to continue, playing their hits for fans.
Now, one of the cassettes I gave you that has some air checks is also, I did an interview years ago with Richard Marx.
Okay, cool.
And here's a little figure, Filbert fact for you folks out there. little alliteration from anxious anchors placed in powerful posts, to quote Albert Brooks in Broadcast News, right?
Yeah, one of my favorite movies.
Yeah. Anyway, Richard Marx sang background on Gordon Lightfoot's Anything for Love.
Well, here you go.
Which was one of his last, it was an adult contemporary. It was produced by David Foster, the, quote, Canadian super producer. And singing background on that song is Richard Marx, and she passed away a few years ago, Vesta Williams.
Don't know if I remember that name. Okay.
Good R&B singer. And
well, there's some real trivia for your next trivia gathering, folks. Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, it sounds like, sir, you've done okay for yourself over the years.
Haven't gotten rich, though.
And then I was going to kind of bring that up. You're one of the few people I've talked to that has not said anything about needing to work extra jobs in order to put food in your mouth.
No, but by the same token, and especially the past couple of weeks, the old 401k, which I'm still contributing to, has gotten hammered. But we had a good first quarter. First quarter of the year was good. But no, I can understand where you'd be a little concerned. I retired probably a little sooner than I should have, as far as, building it up a little bit bigger, the old retirement money. But you know what? It evens out. I mean, in the long run, stick with your investments, and they do pay off. And the 401k is still, what we're living off of is still strong, even though you got a quarter or two that, sucks. What can you do? Any retirement in the pipeline here, or I do want to work through this year because it's another national election, and
that's true.
This will be, I think, the 13th since I've been going back to the Boston days.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens next year.
Okay, all right.
Knock on wood, this isn't wood, but the health is still. Even though I did crack a tooth a couple of weeks ago, so I've got some dental work in the future in May.
Yeah, but unlike a lot of the folks we've talked about in the last few minutes, you're still on this side of the grass. Yeah. So keep it that way, okay?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And continued success doing the mornings on GY.
Thank you.
And whatever you choose to do. And we're going to get you to this lunch because you know everybody that's there. You've probably worked with a lot of the people that are there. So we got to get you. We got to arrange it.
One of the guys that probably there a lot is Mike Patrick, right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yep. And you and Mike worked for many years. He retired just a couple of years back at GY.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think he's out in Cleveland this weekend.
So he is. He's at a college reunion.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think he went to Ashland College, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, which is now Ashland University, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And Mike is with some of his old college disc jockey friends, and they're going to be on the air this actual evening for about 6 hours on their old college radio station. Some of the old guys come back and wreak havoc, I'm sure. Well, Jim, great catching up with you and learning a little bit more about your career, even though we've known each other all these years. I didn't know about some of the turns and twists that you've made over the years, but again, one of the more successful broadcasters in the Capital Region.
Well, thank you.
And,
thanks for inviting me to do this. And now,
pleasure.
where are we going to see this?
Actually, it will post. Yeah, it'll post on May 10th.
Okay.
And then we go from there. And I'm always looking for suggestions as to others that I should be talking to. Like we have discussed already, I try to catch these people before they pass on me. It doesn't always work. There are a few people that I knew very well that I wanted to get on here, and life just and death, unfortunately, just got in the way. But for the most part, we're trying to capture the history of Capital Region Radio from the last 50 years and plus. That's and good. We're getting there. I've got a few more on the list, and we'll see how long we can stretch this out. Do you think the future of radio is still viable? Or? Well, you know what? That's the $1 million question, isn't it? It's never going to go back to the way it was. But then again, these things happen. I mean, you look at the fact that in the early 1900s, all of a sudden, the blacksmith shops were gone. So the same thing seems to be happening with radio. There are certain parts of radio that will just never, be the way they were when you've got so many alternatives as to how you can listen to music and find your news.
Right.
And so it makes
a lot of people get their news from the phone these days.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And it makes it tough for the traditional radio people to see this happening, but it is what it is. Pardon me for using that very trite phrase, but now I don't miss it as much as I thought I might when I was
after
first
that earthquake,
go.
And we got 6 to 8 phone calls, bang bang, and some of the TV stations that were on that day were saying, our newsroom was flooded with phone. Yeah, it's people okay, this has happened. Maybe WGY will know about it.
Exactly.
Or maybe WRGB, WTEN, WN, whatever.
They still know about it. Exactly. Yeah. They'll have the story. And we count on you for stuff like that. Yep.
So that's good that, that people can still count on it.
And I hope that continues for a while. Yeah. Yep. All right, James, enjoy. And thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
See you again soon.
Okay.
Radio Split Ranch.
A man who knows what he likes and likes what he knows. Isn't Jim just the consummate professional? And he did all that with stops at just 4 sets of call letters along the way. So let me get the calculator out here, as our running total of call letters that our 32 guests to date have worked for is kind of getting up there. We've now reached 315 stations represented by all the professionals we've had conversations with. So listen, if you're enjoying this broadcasting time travel we're doing here at the ranch, please tell your friends and leave some comments on our Facebook page or our home base, podbean.com. I'm also interested in your suggestions for future interviews. If I've left out any of your favorite broadcasters who've passed through the Capital Region over the years, I'm interested in hearing from you. Drop me a personal note if you'd like at wgarling@aol.com. As Jim and I referred to in our talk this month, we spent more than a few Saturday mornings over the years as part of the legendary weekend WGY mainstay Joe Gallagher's broadcast, just helping Joe fill in some of the time between his guests on his long-running show on the 50,000-watt, 102-year-old powerhouse. And I recorded a few of them for posterity. I'm just that way. Today we go back almost exactly 10 years to June 22nd, 2014, when the three of us did our best to entertain each other and Joe's loyal audience, of course. Hope you get a kick out of it, and it's enough to tempt you to come back next month to the Radio Split Ranch. In the meantime, don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened.
Partly sunny and increasingly humid on Tuesday with a shower thunderstorm in the afternoon, high 84. With your AccuWeather forecast, I'm meteorologist Mike Lissini on 810 and 103.1 WGY.
64 at the airport, 66 here in Latham. I'm Jim Gagliardi. Next news at 9:30 on News Radio 810 and 103.1 WGY. The Capital Region's news, traffic, and weather station.
Hot diggity dog. Well, your buddy Chris is here, and I say your buddy Chris and I, we're disagreeing in here on some things.
Uh-huh.
Your friend Chris, he thinks... Well, Chris, why don't you tell him what?
What were we talking about?
About?
I'm in the other room now. I can't remember what we were talking
Casey
about.
Kasem.
Well, certainly Casey Kasem.
Very sad about Casey Kasem.
Absolutely,
He's
yeah.
Very great, a very good performer, announcer.
Yeah. And where I work on Oldies 98.3, we're doing a 2-hour special tribute to him at noontime today.
Oh,
so
really?
people get a chance to tune in. Yeah, his kids, his son and daughter put it together, and it's very nice.
Oh, really?
What are their names?
Thanks, Joe.
No, you don't
hanging
know
me
that?
out. I've forgotten their names.
Okay, I didn't know if they're start with I saw yesterday watching college baseball.
Yeah.
Texas. By the way, a local fellow's on one of the Virginia.
I
the-
heard. Yeah.
Vanderbilt
Yeah.
for But anyway, we were watching the Texas game, and Roger Clemens' son plays on Texas.
Okay.
His name is Casey, Kacy. He's got a son named Cody.
Cody, right?
As
Okay.
well. So I'm wondering if Casey Kasem had similar names for his kids.
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
No. Alliteration is what you're going after. Yeah. No, I
Jim
don't
is
think so.
Chris, your
Yes.
friend Chris from Boston,
Yes.
who whiled away his hours there, by the way, as we know, is a big fan of the Kardashians.
No, I'm not.
Oh, didn't you say that?
No, I didn't say
Oh.
that. We were talking about.
Okay.
We talked about Casey and how when he left American Top 40 the second time in 2004, that Ryan Seacrest took over for him.
Oh, yeah, Ryan
Yeah.
Seacrest.
And then
Okay,
you
you're-
were saying something about, you didn't think he was very talented.
I didn't say that. I have met Ryan Seacrest in person. I didn't
Oh.
say he wasn't very talented at all.
Oh, okay.
What I said was I didn't think he was on the same level as Casey Kasem, but you
Okay.
said he... See that? He's a little sneak in there, out of the room in there. Your friend Chris, you both went to the same school in Boston, right?
Yeah.
All right.
We learned all this in
Sneak
college.
University.
And you have that 2-year degree, by the way, Jim?
Yes.
Chris?
I have a half a degree. It's an associate's degree. So
I
I
did-
call it my half. Well, forget it.
Listen, I met Ryan Seacrest
Yeah, where'd you meet him?
on a telethon here locally.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I had to introduce him, bring him on, and I said,
Cool.
gee, Ryan, I said, people have been mistaking me for you all day.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I told Jay Bobbin that I shook his hand twice in one day, and I've only seen his show once. So I said I shook his hand more times, twice as much as I've seen his show. And then Jay told him in an interview that I said that.
Oh,
He said he got a laugh out of it,
Yeah.
but I didn't say he was not. I think he's a talented guy. I don't put him in the same thing as Casey Kasem.
Okay.
But then you said he was off running these Kardashian
Well,
shows.
yeah, he's-
I'm not big on that stuff at all. That's
well,
trash.
neither am I. It's not, but it's not aimed at us.
But people are making money off that.
That's true.
Yeah, why are they, Jim? Why, if you had a chance to make money off something that was less than decent, would you be jumping in the bandwagon?
No, I probably wouldn't, but a lot of
No.
people would. So,
All right, and here's another one over here now. We got another one, another little buddy from Boston. Boston's a pretty liberal town anyway, right?
Massachusetts tends to vote Democratic. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, Chris.
How did we get all the way from that to politics?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Very good, Joe.
That's very good,
Drew,
Joe.
you got because
I'll tell you don't miss a trick here.
G-Dog.
So, Chris, what's new?
Oh, gosh. Like I said, Casey at noontime today, that tribute. I'm looking forward to listening to it myself while I'm painting my deck this afternoon.
You're painting your deck?
Is it
Yeah.
good? Do you have an advance word, Chris, if it's going to be like some of his countdown shows or some personal moments, private moments?
I'm not positive on that, but I would think since it's his kids that there will be some fun, memories as, from the family side of things.
You're holding back. You're
And-
under an embargo.
Oh, I have not listened to it myself, so I can't tell you.
He sounds like
I'm a part-timer, Joe.
You'd be a
Remember,
great-
you know what part-timers, get
poor
around here.
thing.
I find out usually after the fact.
Would make a great presidential spokesperson, right? You'd be the one the media's after. I will. I really don't know at this point. You know darn well. You probably heard the whole show already.
No, I've not.
Okay, now he's giving me that Jay Carney look.
Jay Carney. Okay.
He's
Okay. Yeah, the former. Yeah.
He's going to the former president.
Yeah, former, because he just, his last day was, I think, Friday or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
My last day might be today.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just never know where these are going.
You
when I
never
come
broke
in
the
here.
embargo. You kept the embargo solid,
go.
although you've
Exactly.
probably seen the show 3 times. And he's telling us with a straight face that I have no idea.
I'm
what's in
just
that
glad I
show.
came
mean,
in at 9 o'clock and not at 8 o'clock, because I don't know, name that tune that he put you through, Jim, all the time is just amazing.
Well, how would you do on that? You do pretty well yourself.
I would do okay. Now, the original Name That Tune, if you remember, they didn't play the original songs. They had people singing, the song.
Yeah, that's right.
I had trouble with that occasionally because there's something, I think, in your brain where you know the song, but if it's not the original, you're not sure what the name is or who did it or whatever.
Right.
But usually the first few notes of a song, when you've played them as long as, Jim and I have been around them, you know them.
Wow. Yeah, you guys have been around for a while.
I opened myself up for that, didn't I? For actually 45 years this Tuesday.
Congratulations.
45?
45 years this Tuesday is my anniversary falling in love with On the Radio.
You've been doing this longer than I've been alive. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, right.
That is absolutely amazing. That's why I really, you do play crossword puzzles to keep your mind going okay during. No, I'm serious.
Actually, I do.
Okay, because I'm president of the Young Bucks Club here at Dublin. We have a little PSA out for our older colleagues.
Yeah, G-Dog's tail is wagging here because he's telling fibs.
We want you to play crossword puzzles to keep your mind active. Take all your medications.
Sure.
We want you to I forget the third one, but the fourth one is use your signal lights.
Oh, use my signal lights and don't leave them on. Don't take the eventual left.
Yeah, we want you guys. We want the older. We appreciate you, the older folks. We do, you guys. So. The Young Bucks wanted you to know that.
Okay.
So, anyway, Chris, you don't look happy. What's wrong?
No, I'm fine.
Is everything okay?
Everything's
Is this
fine.
idea to paint your deck yours or your wife's?
Well, yeah.
Here we go. I'm getting it now. I'm sensing it,
If it were up to me, I would have left it natural years ago. But this is like the 5th time I've had to stain it in the last, 10 years.
Do you ever say, why don't you do it yourself, honey? Do you ever want to?
No, Joe. I love my wife. We just had our 36th anniversary.
You threw me in with Ryan Seacrest. I'm trying to throw you in now with your wife is all. I'm just the poor thing, probably sitting home saying, I had nothing to do with that, Mr. Gallagher. We shouldn't call me Mr. Gallagher because I'm a younger guy.
So what are you up to today? You going to go out on your hog?
Yeah, Jim
scooter?
said you got out pretty close to that when you opened your car door.
I almost ran over it. I didn't see it there at first.
Oh, stop. You think it's too small?
I think it's too small, Jim.
Yeah, I want to get a big motorcycle.
Oh, yeah, I think that's the next step.
Yeah, the next step.
And then the one after that is that coffin-shaped thing that puts you in the ground in.
Oh, listen to that.
Oh, Chris Ford, a little zinger there, eh?
A little zinger is right. Yeah. Well, all right, as long as you're not going to tell us what the Casey Kasem show is about.
You have to listen.
You have an embargo. We'll buy into that. And anyway, Chris, it is good to see you again. I wish we had a little more time, but
that's okay.
You're in a rush today.
I'm glad I was able to stop by and say hi.
And good luck painting your deck.
I'll be listening to Casey Kasem at noontime today, the tribute, while I'm doing that.
If your wife let you.
Yes.
Right? Although you've already heard the show 3 times. All right. Well, Chris, thank you. That's on our sister station. What caller is it?
Oldies 98.3.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I do enjoy listening to you on there, and I hear Chris. All right. And Jim, thank you. Chris, thank you. Joe, thank you. Andrew, thank you. We're going to come back with a veterinarian. Oh, you might find this interesting. I'm not sure, Chris. About animals. You have an animal?
No, we don't have any animals, but I respect those that do. And
the summer care for the animals is very important. They're just like us. They get hot. They get all.
That's right, G-Dog. You get hot, right?
Stop. G-Dog is not an animal. Okay, we'll be right back in a moment. It's 9:16 WGY. Good morning.
People can't get enough of Peach's Cafe.
I can't tell you how many omelets